Hi, Michael from Ritters. I hope when you're entering our nursery or just driving down the street, you notice this wonderful bed that we planted here over the last several years. Maybe about 3 years ago we started this. It's not just because it's pretty, but because it's a place where you can see things that we sell as they grow in a garden setting. Case in point, this behind me is the giant silvergrass, Miscanthus sinensis. Easily the tallest hardy grass we sell that's not a bamboo. This is actually two plants that were in 2-gallon containers when we planted them about 3 years ago. This is also what G&B compost does for you. Some other things that we have in here, this is the Japanese Caria japonica, or sometimes called the Japanese rose. Now we don't sell this all the time, but we should have it available for 2022. Blooms all through the summer. The stems are wonderful pea green, excellent for cutting, for winter decoration, floral arrangements, things like that. This, I've been taking a lot of people to see this summer. This is a hydrangea called Vanilla Strawberry. And if you compare the looks of this with the plants that we have out in the field, this sells that plant. Because hydrangeas, PG hydrangeas, they just don't look that great in small pots sitting around in a nursery. Turn its roots loose in a garden setting and look what you get. This is absolutely magnificent. We pruned this back pretty hard this spring, down to about a foot. And so these blooming canes stick about 4 feet, 4.5 feet high. But the flower heads aren't too heavy for these canes to support. That's one of the things about this variety that makes it so good. So this is another plant that we don't carry as often, but we'll probably have it available for 2022. This is a privet, columnar privet, called Straight Talk, and it holds its leaves until January, and then they drop. We have here one of the most popular plants in the last several weeks. Unfortunately, it's not looking at you. These are the hardy Hibiscus. And this is a perennial that dies all the way to the ground, comes back from the roots very late in the spring, actually the beginning of summer really, late May, early June. But each year you get another shaped bush. Last year these were taller, not as wide. This year they're wider and not as tall. So after about 3 years, I think this is where this has decided it's going to settle in. This is a red bud here called Merlot. And it's done really well. It's growing like a weed. Several feet of growth a year. The flowers are magenta pink just before the leaves come out. Same time as dogwoods. The flowers are edible, by the way. They taste like green beans. This has really floored me. I had no idea they were going to rebound like this. This dogwood is called Neon Flash. It's a red twig, bright red twigs in the fall. We planted these back when we first did this bed about 3 years ago, and we let them grow without doing anything to them. This last spring, we cut them almost to the ground. Just little stubs about 6 inches in length. Look at what happened. All that energy stored in the roots, this winter after the leaves drop, which they will in a burst of colors, just crazy colors, these stems are going to be magnificent. This is going to stop traffic driving past the nursery. So please stop and look at them, okay? This is a Korean silver fir variety called silver pearl, or no, excuse me, silverlock. Horseman silverlock sometimes. This was rather a poorly shaped tree when we planted it. That's one of the reasons it came out here, was it wasn't as nice as the other ones that we had. But after a few years in the ground, it sorted itself out. Now it's an absolutely beautiful tree. Just goes to show you, sometimes something that doesn't look so good in the nursery can actually turn out to be a really pretty tree. So don't turn your noses up at imperfection. While we got the camera close, this is a white Gila. This variety is called Sonic Bloom Red. And A lot of plants like this were severely damaged in the freezes that we had this spring. In fact, this one was almost taken to the ground. I wasn't really sure how well it would do. Well, there you go. G&B compost. This is a Buddleia variety called Miss Violet. Of the misses, Miss Violet and Miss Pearl are the smallest. Miss Molly and Miss Ruby get to be really big. One of my very favorite ones. It's got greener foliage than some of the other misses in the series. Beautifully fragrant flowers. This has been going full tilt boogie now for a month and a half, maybe 2 months. Lavenders, forgot what variety, either heed cone or mudstead. Anyway, it's hard to tell them apart these days. It's a mystery lavender. Purple Haze, Buddleia. We have this booked again for 2022. This plant here caught one of our customers' attention. Actually, a lady was stopped in traffic waiting for the signal several weeks ago. She called in and said, "What is that big grass that's by the fire hydrant?" See, this is a perfect example of the kind of plant we wanted to put in the display, because to see this in the nursery, it's just a little green tuft of fine textured leaves. Not remarkable at all. Kelsey says last year, I think it might have been fall of 2 years ago. But anyway, it hasn't been here very long. Look what happened. The flower stems can get up to 9 feet. Here they're 6.5-ish. So, and been looking good for weeks and weeks and weeks. These will stand through the winter. It's really, really good grass. This is the giant feather grass, or Stipa giganteus. So, sold out of this one for the season, sorry, but make a note for next year. And then a lot of trees, when you see them in the nursery, you can't really see the beauty. Case in point, this is a paperbark maple, Acer Grizzium. When we show this to people in a 5-gallon or 7-gallon can, it's a stiff, kind of sticky looking tree, lacking grace, twiggy, just not very pretty. Starting to come into its own. Fall color is an amazing red. The bark steals the show during the winter. It peels like sheets of copper. Absolutely stunning, first-class tree. Beautiful in small gardens, very hardy, leaves out late, isn't subject to the freeze damage that sometimes afflicts Japanese maples. If you've had issues with Japanese maples because of freeze damage over the last several years, you might consider this. It's an absolutely gorgeous tree. Now we're going to go someplace else. This is the bed that's in front of the store, and this is an area where during the winter we shovel a lot of snow off of the entry here. Sometimes the snow plows come in, dump it here. Anyway, for the most part, the things in here are perennials that die back, except for a hydrangea there that died back. We have a number of plants here, some of them ordinary, hosta for example, probably a variety called Francie. But a couple of cool things in here. Now if you've listened to me before, you know I got a thing for the perennial fuchsias. This one is Magellanica, and it's one of the very hardiest. And it's a great one to start with if you haven't had experience with these plants. We don't even protect this. This got cut down to the ground by one of our staff this spring and has rebounded, going full now for, well, since the end of June it started blooming. Japanese forest grass, a variety called all gold, more green than gold, but the color will pick up as the sun lowers and the sky begins to shine on it a little bit more. This is kind of a surprise that it's doing as well in here as it is. This is Russian sage. Now typically you'll find this growing in very hot, sunny, dry conditions. This is anything but it's doing quite well. Surprise, surprise. Sometimes even sun-tolerant plants will grow well in the shade. I have a couple of little things tucked in here. A gentian called True Blue, which we weren't able to bring in this year. A lot of things that we counted on showing up never did, but hopefully the prospects for 2022 will be better. And then Echinacea. This is a fairly recent planting. A lot of the things that were in here got turned into pesto by customers' feet over the winter, so we might just leave that vacant. Now we're going to go look at another area. Everyone wants to know what this one is. This is Hydrangea Paniculata Strawberry Shortcake. And we actually do have this plant for sale, although when you see it, you're going to say, no, that's not this. Oh yeah, it is. Sometimes the hydrangeas do better in the ground than they do in those little pots. This is Strawberry Shortcake. Magnificent. Later in the day when the sun shines on these panicles, they glow like they've got lit from within. I hope the color lasts and lasts and lasts. The leaves will turn orange this fall, and if these are still this intense color, holy moly, that's going to be something else. Just about on its last legs for the season, this is a Crocosmia called George Davidson. This was 1 gallon size plant when we planted it about 3 years ago, and it's taken up, well, about a 4 square foot area, just the corms. And then the foliage of the plant is taken up about 9 square feet, roughly 3 feet by 3 feet. Good colonizer, very hardy, doing quite well in this position. There's a handful of Crocosmias that are really good doers in the Spokane area. So George Davidson is this one. These seed heads are actually kind of ornamental. When the seeds ripen, they split open, they're orange. So you can use these as a cut flower while they're in bloom, wait for the seed heads to develop, use them as an arrangement addition. I can smell this Clematis walking into the building sometimes. It's called Sweet Summer Love, and it's a hybrid between the Viticella variety related to Jackmanii, and it's thought to be the Sweet Autumn Clematis. Blooms a lot earlier than that one does, and the fragrance is different, which makes me wonder if that's really who the daddy is. But we had this early in the season this year, but again, because of weird things happening in the supply chain, we weren't able to bring any in once this came into bloom. So mark this one down. You cut this down to the ground in late fall or early winter, or you can wait until spring to do it, but we did it in late fall. Comes back from the base, fresh foliage, flowers like mad now. It's going on a month. It's got maybe another 3 or 4 weeks left of buds, and then that'll be it for the season. The fragrance is vanilla sweet with a little bit of almond in the background. It's one of my very favorites. It's in the Proven Winners lineup. Anytime you see one of those pots, you know it's something good. This is one of my indispensables. There's actually 3 plants here. The middle one is kind of squished. This is Rosanne, R-O-Z-A-N-N-E. It is a great plant. A beautiful perennial geranium. Been blooming since the end of May. Still going to be in flower a month, maybe 2 months from now. The foliage will turn coral shades, yellows, reds. It's beautiful in the spring when it first leaves out. It's as pretty as many of the coral bells. The foliage has a multi-hued green, little red markings on it. One plant can cover 3 feet square with flowers all summer long. A great plant to associate with tall growing roses. It'll serve as not only a beautiful flowering base, but it'll help to keep down diseases like black spot. Keeps the soil cool and moist. Indispensable. Fragrant returns is the Daylily here. This is round 2 or maybe round 3 for the flowers on this one. Sweet scent. You know, daylilies are edible. If you like asparagus, eat your daylilies. Tastes just like it. This is the south side of the garden center. The sunniest, hottest place on the property. Probably the most reliable rosemary for our area. If you're interested in growing one as a perennial, this is ARP, A-R-P. We planted this roughly 3 years ago, and it has been a little bit taller than this. We pruned it back some this spring. This is not the prettiest rosemary, but what the heck, it's a rosemary. Tastes great, and that's what we're growing it for, right? The flowers are kind of a wishy-washy blue, but oh my gosh, just, oh my, yes, that is excellent. This is a yucca. There aren't very many yuccas that we can grow that form trunks like Joshua trees, but this is one. This is Yucca Rostrata, and it'll get, 3 or 4 years, it'll just do this. And then maybe in the 4th year, it'll start growing a trunk. And it'll get taller and taller and taller, taller, and then a flower spike will emerge, and then the head will split, and it'll be a double header, get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then they'll bloom, and then they'll split, and it'll end up being this multi-headed thing, crazy good. It's not going to happen overnight, but if you like yuccas that are unusual, this is a great one. Crepe Myrtle. This is going to bloom this year, finally. This dies back to the ground. Probably not the hardiest crepe myrtle that you can grow in Spokane, but the list is very short anyway. But they need a lot of heat to bloom, and it got it this year. I mean, you can roast chickens hanging them from the ceiling here. It's so hot. So finally we get some flowers. And then some of the other things here, the hyssops, agastache. This is California Fuchsia, Zauschneria. This has been blooming all summer. This is Penstemon Heterophyllus, electric blue. Hardy little kid here, evergreen foliage. This completely disappears. There's no trace of it come winter. However, this forms a little evergreen shrublet. Mother lode is the juniper there, blue-green with yellow tints. And then Helen von Stein, Stackies, the lamb's ears. And then we have a couple of fire chief arborvitaes there. They'll turn that orange tinge that you see on the tips. The whole thing's going to look like that in a couple of months.
Cape Fuchsia?
That's the Cape Fuchsia right there. Oh, no, that, here. Yeah, this is Phigelius. We sell these. People look at the zone tag and says, zone 7, well, what do you have? As a perennial, this comes back from the roots all the way down into zone 5 areas. So hummingbirds love this. It does colonize to an extent on rich soils, but you know, that's just extra plants as far as I'm concerned. What we have there is Fiona Sunrise Poet's Jasmine. The Poet's Jasmine is the jasmine of Shakespeare, his Midsummer's Night Dream. Thus they call it Poet's Jasmine or Summer Jasmine. Fiona Sunrise has golden foliage. It's actually pretty darn hardy for a jasmine. You can't just let it run amok. You have to give it some winter protection. But one of my coworkers, the gal on the other side of the camera there, she's had this at her parents' house for what, 5 years? Probably 5 years. Yeah, and she just hacks it back. So excellent, excellent plant. Let it climb on something, don't twine it around or something, just like tie it to a post. And then lay it down on the ground in the fall, rake some pine needles over it while it's young. Eventually it'll get too big to do that, too stiff, in which case it's on its own. Really, really cold winter comes along, I might take it down to the ground, but that's okay, it'll come back from the roots. So we sell this out in the nursery. It has a beautiful perfume. Repeats after the first flowering, which happens in July, scattered flowers after that. Miss Kim is our lilac here. It didn't flower as heavily this year as it did the previous year. She really shot a lot off last year. But when this blooms, we can smell it on the other side of the nursery. This is about as tall as Miss Kim gets. I'll stand up here next to it for scale. 7 to 8 feet, similar width. The flowers are kind of a pinkish lavender. And then the fall color is a weird combination of purple and yellow. Not the best for fall color, but no lilac is really. But the perfume is magnificent. People notice this on lilacs, especially this one, the way the leaves roll up. Heat stress. They still function, don't worry about it. This is our last stop on our little tour. Madam Galen. This is a hybrid trumpet vine. The Chinese trumpet vine is one parent and the US native radicans is the other. This has the largest flowers of all the trumpet vines that we can grow. It's a wonderful salmon orange, red color. This has been blooming for several weeks. It's got several more weeks to go. Trumpet vines are extremely vigorous growers. They're a very heavy vine. They glue themselves to whatever they're growing on, so you got to be careful about using them on the side of your house unless you really don't care about your siding. But blooms on the new growth. You can prune this back as hard as you want. Once it's established, it'll flower for you. And that's kind of the thing. These vines take quite a while to become established once they're planted. You may not have many flowers for several years, even if the plant you're buying has flowers on it. Be patient with it. Eventually they'll get around to flowering. Again, once more, this is Madam Galen hybrid trumpet vine. We do have some of these for sale right now. That's it for me. We'll see you next time.
Wave goodbye.
Bye-bye.